had a home birth experience earlier this year, just a few months ago, with my second child, and it was a very positive experience. And so I want to share what happened. My first experience giving birth was a 98-hour long labor, and there were a lot of interventions. It was very scary, and just I really regret that I chose to put my faith and trust in the hospital, and I didn't prepare myself. I thought that the hospital was just going to take care of everything for me. These are professionals, and that is not how it went down. So that was a pretty traumatic experience, and so with my second child, I didn't want to repeat that. And so I decided, I was strongly considering home birth, but I was really, really hesitant about the safety, even up until the last few days before I gave birth, or maybe even the day before. I was still hesitant to go through with the home birth. And so I had tried to figure out what went wrong with my first birth, and I learned that largely there's a cycle called the fear-pain cycle, and the more that you allow yourself to be afraid, lose control of your negative emotions in that way, the more pain that you feel, and then that pain feeds into the fear, and it becomes a cycle. And so it's very important that you, as the person giving birth, are prepared emotionally. Any fears that you have, you need to dive into them and keep asking yourself, why am I afraid of that? What if that did happen? What would be the solution? And make sure that you feel prepared in every way. And if there are fears that you can find a solution to, you need to solve them. And if there are fears that there is no solution to, there are just some risks in giving birth, you have to come to a place where you accept those risks. You accept that, yes, there's a chance that something negative could happen that's out of my control, but I can't change that, and so I accept it. And so one example might be, oh, I feel fear, and so I feel fear of pain, and so I'm going to learn everything that I can about how to mediate pain during the labor process. And then once you feel that you've learned everything you can about how to mediate pain, then move on to the next thing. Maybe you know that there's going to be some pain, even after you use all the mediation techniques, and you choose to just, okay, I'm going to accept that. I'm going to maintain emotional control. Another thing that really worked for me, there's this acronym, PAIN, PAIN, and so the pain has a purpose, it's anticipated, it's intermittent, and it's normal. And so as you're going through pain, another thing is not calling it pain, but calling it intensity. And I would say that my experience giving birth, I want to say that it was, it's hard for me to even say that it was painful per se. I would say that it was intense at some points. There was a point towards the middle. It was like an 18-hour labor, the second one. I would say that somewhere in the middle, I did almost lose control of my emotions and start to panic, but I was able to, I had my support partner, was able to get me back on track, and I was able to stay in control of my emotions that entire time, and except for that instance. And that was really key. It changed everything. And the big underpinning is that in my first labor, I was relying on men. I was relying on modern medicine to deliver me through this experience and the baby. But in the second experience, because the first one didn't work, I said, well, I'm going to put everything in the hands of God, which I should have done in the first place. And I decided to pray from the beginning instead of praying towards the end, which is what I did with my first pregnancy. I was just so emotional and afraid in my first pregnancy, and so emotionally unprepared. I didn't even remember to pray until like the end of my first labor, which so in this second experience was much better. It was all in the hands of God, and I never planned on getting an epidural, and I didn't get one, of course, because I was at home. And it was a really good experience. In my situation, I didn't have any serious health problems, any reasons why I would need to be at the hospital. And most people don't, I would say, have a serious reason. Like, and now I'm not an expert in this area, but my understanding is that there's the big key is getting to the hospital in time if you are hemorrhaging, and you need blood. And so that's the bigger safety concern. And then the other one is if you are having problems and the baby isn't getting oxygen, that's another time that you would want to be in the hospital, because that's time sensitive as well. Most of the labor situations are time sensitive, but for me and my situation, I live really close to hospitals and emergency vehicles. So, and I found that the wait time that I would have at the hospital is not that much shorter than me just being at home and then getting taken to the emergency room. And so, I looked at all the statistics, and it's very, very unlikely that I would need to go to the emergency room for any reason. Home birth, I know a lot of people who've done home birth, and they all have very good experiences. And a lot of people that I know have actually never even been to the hospital to give birth, and they're not sure why you would, and unless you were getting unless you're there for an epidural or a planned C-section, or there's some other health problem. So I for me, it was just one of the best decisions I've ever made. And the cost as well, the cost was like out of pocket, which the first labor delivery cost $33,000, and I had to pay out of pocket about $3,000. And then this labor was supposed to cost like $3,000 or $4,000 because I had a midwife to help me at home. And I think I only ended up paying like $1,500, maybe $2,000 in total for any like little fees that added up. So ultimately it was less expensive, and I'm not sure if I even used insurance for the second birth. So it's much more affordable. Not you need to make sure that it's safe first, of course, for your situation. I think I probably wouldn't have done it if I lived in a really rural area, where it would take me like an hour to get to the hospital. But given my location and the health condition and the amount of preparation that I did and educating myself and emotionally preparing, I felt that it was less risky to give birth at home than it would be to give birth at the hospital, because like I said, the hospital situation was very ugly. It was a lot of bad things happened that were very unnecessary, and it was a very traumatizing experience. And so in my situation, I perceived there to be higher risk at the hospital. So much so that I decided, well, I know that that didn't work for me. Let's try doing a home birth. So I did the home birth, and I was in labor from 9:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. the next day, and I went through each contraction, not expecting the contractions to follow any certain pattern. And with my first labor, I was really counting the time in between contractions and how long did they last. Are they getting closer together? Are they getting more intense? And that's really wrong. Every labor is different, and your contractions are gonna, maybe not even appear to follow any pattern at all. And for me, that's how both of my labors went, is there wasn't really a pattern of the contractions becoming more intense. They just got very intense right before the baby was actually born. And breathing techniques, I need to throw out this name, Bridget Taylor. Last name is Teyler, I think. And I watched her YouTube videos like crazy, and I did a lot of her meditations, which really helped. And I used her breathing techniques that she talks about. And that whole YouTube channel really, really helped prepare me. And then, of course, prayer, having God be my rock rather than relying on myself or other people, saying, yeah, this is in God's hands, and whatever negative thing that might happen that's out of my control, that's part of his plan, and I'm okay with that. And knowing that I did everything that I could to prepare so that things would go well, because you have 9 months to prepare, so start preparing yourself. Whittle down all your fears is the biggest thing. You don't want to go into it afraid, because that is one of the most dangerous things you can do. I did a lot of research, did a lot of reading, and even like scientific papers and things, and it appears that the deciding factor on whether your labor is going to be dangerous or not is if you were afraid or not when you went into it, and were you able to regulate your emotions during the experience. And I found, I didn't allow my fear to take me over, and the experience ended up almost being in a way, it was a very positive experience, even with all the risk and discomfort associated with it. It was so empowering. Some people don't like that word, empowering, but I mean, that is what it was. It was very self-affirming, like, wow, I did that. I really overcame a lot of the trauma that I had in that first pregnancy and birth, because it just showed that I should have confidence in my body, in my ability to cope, and my ability to prepare and make good decisions. And so I gave birth in my own bathroom, and I didn't use water. I used water for some pain mediation, somewhere in the middle of the labor a few times, but when it came time, like I knew that it was ready. I was ready to push and have this baby. I walked into the bathroom and I had John with me to kind of support me to make sure I don't fall over. And I knew that it was time to push, and I decided to push out this baby. And I think it might have been in like just a couple of breaths, just a couple of pushes, that he was born all in one push. I felt, my water broke. I felt that ring of fire, which was actually encouraging because I knew that meant that I must be birthing his head. And then he was born all in one breath, all in one push. His head was born and the rest of his body came forth. And there were no problems. If there had been a problem, like say I was bleeding or something, the midwife carries Pitocin with her, which is the same thing that they would use at the hospital to stop the bleeding. It causes you to contract, which helps stop the bleeding in utero. And so that's another factor that helped me decide to go through with the home birth, because they would use the same technique to hold me over until we were able to get a blood transfusion or something like that. And then, I think I have a lot more details to go over, a lot more to say, but right now, I think this video is long enough, and I'd love to hear any questions that you might have so that I can follow up with answering.